Rick.
Brendan.
Nick, we are back. Why don't
are.
you tell the people, the masses, who our guest was?
Our guest was Samuel Cohn. He's a professor of sociology at Texas A&M, and he wrote a book and recently published it, and it's called All Societies Die, How to Keep Hope Alive. And in our conversation with him last week, a couple weeks ago, posted it last week, we talk about his book, things that contribute to the death of societies and the collapse, and some of the problems that we might be facing today in American society.
Absolutely.
A quick little synopsis.
There we go.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Brendan?
No.
Perfect. All right. Well,
Let's jump right into it.
stay tuned for... Oh, yeah. So, yes, All Societies Die. First take, first impressions based on the conversation.
I mean, the most glaring topic for me that I think is, I hope fairly obvious to most people is we got into a little bit of a discussion about a plutocracy and how big businesses are kind of maybe too integrated into our political system and the negative repercussions that comes along with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think honestly, like that's one of the biggest issues.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very clear that on a lot of topics, there's agendas and pre-planned outcomes for what's going to happen. And, money is a valuable thing in our society. Our society has made it one of the most valuable things. So, yeah, I mean, politicians, local governments, everybody is convinced that they need more money. And in many cases they do.
Yeah.
But it's become a problem how much we allow these businesses to like infiltrate these places where really we want unbiased decision making, but it creates an extreme bias towards like the financial benefit. I think that's a huge problem.
It is. And it's just, the greed portion of it, and that being the number one drive to like motivate all action.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what money is anymore. Like when people get into like tons of money, like is there cash? Like, is it just all electronic? I don't understand it.
Well, it's, definitely not cash. Like, that's the scary thing is like, how much money is there really out there?
Yeah.
And how certain are we that the money that we do have is like, it's so uncontrolled. Like, I feel like it's too unregulated when things have gone online.
Yeah.
Because like before, right, we were, I forget what year, I want to say it was either 71 or 73. Like we went off of the gold standard, which meant we had an economy that was, and we were paying out dollar bills that represented a legitimate backing of gold that was held by the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. We don't have that anymore. We went off of that standard. So now it's like this. The system is different, and it's unbacked by anything except for, I guess, major financial banking institutions, or federal banking institutions. I mean, and like it's clearly run amok in society. Like. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy. It doesn't make sense to me most of the time. But, okay, I wanted to get into this point. The thing that he highlighted as the primary goal for a society to really progress and continue like succeeding is to have widespread cooperation and contribution.
Yeah.
Where do you think we stand with that currently?
Terrible.
Tell me how you really feel.
No, but like for real, like, okay, I'm going to even try my best even though it's going to be very difficult to like omit the last 18 months. Okay. Because I think, yeah, there's been a whole like issue. I think there's a ton of divisiveness and like political, attacking from both sides of the aisle that is like clearly not cooperation at its best, very clearly. But let's go even before that. Like I think the most glaring example of where cooperation is not happening is in our underserved communities, right? Like, we have too many cities around the country that just do not even have the base level financial stability to provide their people the financial means to in any way improve their situation. Like, I'm watching this limited series on Netflix called Flint Town about the poverty crisis going on in Flint, Michigan, with the water poisoning that was going on because of the political decision to switch to very outdated pipes instead of going with the reservoir. And the pipes were so old they had lead leaching into the water, and literally you could not drink the water in Flint, Michigan. And yeah, I mean, we just need to make better. And like, it's an extremely complex issue. I definitely don't have the answer, but I'll tell you one thing's for sure. We've got, I think, the ability as a country to decide that we need to shuttle additional financial resources towards underserved communities, because other communities have the means to probably contribute on their own. These communities, they can't even rally together to get money from where. You know, even if you went around a town where the average income is below the poverty line of like 21,000, I think that was what it was in Flint, $21,000 a year annual income of a household. Like, how are they supposed to do anything productive in their community? Like, these people can't even make enough money to get by and survive on their own. And I just don't think there's enough, like, as a United States, right? Like, that's where I'm taking this perspective from. We don't even have enough contribution to help get those people to a better place. I think that's the type of cooperation that needs to happen. I don't think, like, you know, we can talk about cooperation in a bunch of different ways, and like in each community, obviously it needs to happen. But man, if we can't even come together as a country to try and help the people who are struggling the most, and the people who are like genuinely wanting help, like, there's people in these communities. It's not all like, you know, people want to say like, oh, well, you know, you're giving money to drug addicts and you're just paying for them to have more, go get more drugs, or, you know, paying to have people on whatever kind of social programs that are out there. There's people who want to work, who want to contribute, who want to make money. It's not everybody out there who's in these like situations where they're just going to do drugs and commit crimes.
Yeah.
So like, I just don't understand how we're going to make any progress. Like, I love the saying, a rising tide lifts all ships. Like, if we lift the lowest communities out there, every community in the United States will benefit from that. It's not going to be an isolated lifting. So,
right.
Yeah, so that's my justification for giving you an answer of terrible when it comes to cooperation in the United States.
Yeah, the economic disparities are very real. And I think, like you were saying, there are people who are struggling and who are receiving support through social programs, and then if they get a pay grade in their job, then they no longer qualify for these social programs, so they're still stuck in the same spot as they were before. And it's like, what do? Do you just reject the promotion and decline some of maybe your growth in your career, or like, do you just stay in the spot that you're in? And that's, it's really tough.
Yeah, and
that's messed up.
In the limited series I was talking about from Netflix, they were literally simultaneously dealing with what to do about the lead problem in the water, because you couldn't drink the tap water, which is a standard I think almost everybody in the United States has. You can drink the tap water, which is clearly a luxury, and these people are paying for water service. So like, to think that they weren't getting what they were paying for is like part of the problem. And then on top of that, they were dealing with a reduction in police force by by 2/3. So they went from, at their traditional peak, they were able to have 300 officers, and they were down to 98. Crime was out of control. And then with this pending lead issue in the water, they're also in the middle of their election series, needed to reestablish, not ask for more, just continue the status quo of collecting tax money to support the police force. And if they didn't reelect that, it was going to mean a potential 20-person layoff. And it's like,
Jeez.
again, these are, as a society, I feel like the federal government should observe those types of circumstances and be like, we're here to support that.
Yeah.
We can't have, I'm not even getting into the issues with like what goes on within the police forces. And obviously we need good police officers. That's important, but we can't have people shooting on the streets, and we can't have like murders happening. We can't have people not feeling safe in their community either. And like that's an issue that like we shouldn't even be asking a city to face. Like that's a really messed up situation to be in. There's no winning in that situation, because even like you choose one way or the other, you're either getting a reduction in force. And I'm not saying it was an either or situation there. They may have voted to do things to like try and come up with solutions for both sides of the water and the police issue. And thankfully in the series, they did vote to maintain, it's called the millage, which is like their, a taxation to support the police and fire. But man, like just to think that that's even a debate you have to have in one of the top 5 worst crime cities in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about a reduction in police force. That's a crisis if I've ever heard one.
Yeah. I mean, what you just laid out there is exactly what Dr. Cohn kind of laid out in our conversation in his book of the 3 key points being that first, 3 key points as to why societies die. The first, standard of living's collapse. Mm-hmm. And then second, technology disappears. So we could talk about how they chose to use terrible pipes for the water instead of actually having some improvement of what was right. And then reduction in police force and lack of support. And so the crime and violence increased. Mm-hmm. And those 3 things combined, you exactly saw what happened in that town. And how terrible.
To even further the technology piece, I mean, I would say technology is a means to financial like prosperity in a sense. And when General Motors has a giant plant there that's supporting the United States, making Flint, Michigan and Detroit like 2 of the most prosperous cities in the United States, and they shut down plants and lay off hundreds of thousands of people, all of a sudden, like there's no finances coming into the area because they don't want to be there anymore. And now we're building cars in Mexico.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's messed up.
Yeah.
But we've, allowed United States companies or just to, I mean, I'm not saying that it was just because they wanted to go to Mexico. I don't know the General Motors position on this, but Ford only makes 3 cars in the United States. The Mustang, I'm sorry, 3 classes of vehicles: the Mustang, the trucks, and the SUVs. So all of their cars and sedans and everything are built in Mexico. And it's like the reality of what it means for those to have been American jobs is serious, and we've allowed companies of all industries, not just automotive, to take business that could very well be done by people in the United States who want to do better in the United States. And we could have left those jobs here, and it would have cost Ford a lot of money, but maybe it would have increased the rate of inflation and their prices still would have gone up. So like, I don't know that it's right. Like we would have had more money in the economy.
Yeah. The short-term gain.
Right.
Like,
the short-term
they were
savings
going for.
was they were going for. But if we played the long-term, we've got more money in our economy. All of that money stayed in our own system. Like there's no doubt there would have been financially prosperous things in that regard as well. But I mean, when these companies go public and then you've got to make a decision based on quarterly earnings, the move to Mexico is easy.
Yeah.
Because you can project out 10-year savings of, multiple millions of dollars.
Right.
And I don't know, it's a double-edged sword too, because like I'm all for like, contributing to the world economy, and there's a huge case to be made that we are help bringing up the standard of living in Mexico because of that. Mm-hmm. But I just think it's difficult to do at the cost of so many lives in the United States as well. We can support industry in Mexico without foregoing the benefits of industry in the United States.
Right. It's a tough balance with that. Mm-hmm. But I think this is a good lead into what we were discussing right before this in preparation for this office hours of there was a clip that we posted from the conversation where Dr. Cohn says America is the superpower technologically in the world. And he highlights several reasons that lead to this, but one of them being that America started college universities and state universities, and so there were more people in our population that were college educated. He talked also about the GI Bill and having access to promote academic success and education. But then you also talked about how there is a baseline of support in terms of a lot of Americans have most basic needs met compared to maybe other countries in the world that are really struggling just for food and water and shelter. And so there's more of an opportunity for people to really grow because we do have these basic needs met. But that
Maslow hierarchy is what the point you brought up. And that's exactly what I was feeling, that I just didn't say it in that way. But yeah, like we've met the base to the best of our ability. We've equipped people to address the base needs. I'm not going to say we've addressed the needs, but we've equipped people to be able to address those needs much, much better than most other countries have, which allows people to then address things higher up the hierarchy.
Yeah.
But many countries do not even have their basic needs met through like the provided infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is going back exactly to Flint. Like there's a reason that this town is not, being progressive and succeeding. And it's because these basic needs aren't being met, and it's so visible.
Yeah.
And there needs to be that intervention if we want to see more progress.
And it's an extremely difficult solution because the answer is we need to bring jobs back, but we also have to incentivize businesses to come in and be safe and not be looted or not be, the next spot where there's going to be shootings. But and it needs to kind of be big business because you need to get as many jobs as possible. So and you need to put money in the hands of people. You need to stop pushing so many young people to thinking that there's no options for them because of the conditions of living, that dealing drugs or doing whatever is the only financial means they have. Yeah, it's crazy.
It is crazy. It's pretty sad because there's a lot of different places like that I'm unaware of all throughout the United States that really struggle for those needs.
Yeah, every state, I'm sure, has multiple communities like this.
And then this is the tough balance of our society because people say that there is a lot more opportunity here than other places. So a lot of flaws, but hopefully a lot of benefits as well.
Yeah.
This is something that Dr. Cohn said too, he was highlighting that we can name thousands of problems with capitalism, yet there are a lot of benefits and statistics pointing to its positive aspects.
Yeah, and I think the point you're even kind of leaning towards is and I'm going to speak for myself here, socialist programs are not necessarily the answer here. It's not just take the money from the rich and powerful and sprinkle it all over the poor and lift them up and now everything's better. The answer, in my opinion, is set more limitations on these. Because here's an example, right? I'm going to give you two scenarios and I'm going to make my point. Amazon as a delivery service in Flint, Michigan. I'm going to continue to use them as an example. Amazon comes in, they're an outside company, they're doing deliveries in Flint, let's say. The alternative to that is Amazon is required to use local delivery service. If that business was owned by a Flint resident who had a few vans who could do delivery, that the economics of Amazon contracting that business out keeps a lot more money in Flint, as opposed to Amazon owning all the delivery trucks, all the drivers, all the salaries, and really all you're doing is bringing money in at a minimum wage delivery driver job.
Yeah.
Right. But if you had business owners, operations managers, all of these people who are working logistics in the Flint area, you've got, probably a six-figure owner of a business, you've got a $50 to $60,000 manager of a business, you've got a bunch of above minimum wage, hopefully drivers in a bunch of vehicles. That's really good economic stimulus for an area. But we have so many massive businesses that are doing these jobs that really could be locally owned and operated. I'm not saying Apple can like start, aside from like creating manufacturing in the United States, but they're not doing, parts development abroad, right? Like the tech stuff is hard.
Yeah.
But the delivery, the logistics, like a lot of those locally based businesses, food's another great one, like allowing more small local markets to be popped up. Like there's a lot of mom and pop style businesses that should be able to be like done in local communities. And that's like taking so much financial freedom away from people in small communities because we're allowing a company like Amazon to literally own the market on short-term delivery of products and services to an entire country.
Yeah, we're in like the experimental phase of this in our history too. It seems like with the expansion of technology, like companies actually being able to contribute like worldwide now. Like we don't know what to do with all this type of power that companies hold, right? Or like widespread contribution.
Well, I mean, in a way we do. We've probably just forgotten.
Yeah.
I mean, the government disbanded Standard Oil. And ExxonMobil, Arco, Shell, and Chevron all used to be one company owned by the Rockefellers. So we've done this before. We've told businesses that you're too big. It's negatively impacting whatever like the deal is. And we've told them you're now 4 companies and you have to split up. We've done this in the past.
Yeah. I'll take on an Amazon company.
Yeah, you take 1/4 of Amazon.
Okay.
But yeah, no, but you're right. Like and I think this is getting back to the fact that the environment we lived in when that happened was a vastly different business to government relations than it is now. Businesses are deeply embedded within the government. Funding, financial, all of that. That the government would never turn on the businesses like that. It would be too much financial hardship. Campaign dollars wouldn't get paid, like all of that stuff. So it's not a reality anymore that we would do that. I mean, at least not where we stand right now. So yeah, I don't know what the answer is, like, because we are not in a time where that's a realistic, option. So like you're saying, it is a bit experimental where we're at.
Yeah. And this is something I was telling you about earlier, but something my sister brought up was like, yeah, I'm so happy that I wasn't in high school when there was the huge social media boom. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I guess like social media just started. It feels like it's been here forever because it's been in our lives. But looking back looking ahead 1,000 years, when people look back at us, they're going to be like, oh man, like that must have been crazy for these people to just start hopping on social media, growing up in it. And we grew up in it. And it is pretty scary to know that we are in definitely the testing periods of this. And yeah, what are people going to say hundreds of years from now? Like looking back and be like, those people are psychos. Like what were they thinking? What were they doing?
Yeah.
Or is social media just going to take over the world and it's going to be like, wow, they started something great. Like, this is what we need.
I think we've got 10 to 20 years before the technology reaches a point where like the idea of like social media as it is now is not even going to be it's not going to be nearly the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I think, if I really like Ready Player One as like a futuristic look at like some of where society is pushing.
It's pretty scary.
But it's real too. Like your online avatar being the life you would prefer living, and going to some like, multi-axis treadmill where you can like strap in with the Oculus Rift, which we already have. You can be an immersive, like people should look up, like, I think it's called like Game Engine 5 or something like that. We can do ridiculous things with graphics.
I was going to say, I wonder what the most high-tech virtual reality we have right now.
There's some there's some like desert rockscape type places that have been just completely created virtually that are wild to look at. Like, people should really look up how extreme graphics have gotten.
Yeah.
I mean, they're almost undeniably accurate. And the one hard thing is going to be like, and this is something I recently heard on a Joe Rogan episode, but they were talking about how the one thing we can't really do very well yet is get like a fake person created, because like we deal with people on a daily basis. Like, we can easily tell when something's off. And we're just not good enough at that yet, because like to get the full, like you almost need like personality, because facial expressions we read and like body language is such an important part of how we develop like rapport and like communicate with people, that without proper, coding for that, you're not going to be able to convince somebody that that's a real person. But
they'll all just look the same. Like if you can't, tap into the personality.
Mannerisms will all be like identical.
Yeah.
And even if you could probably create like a couple different variants, but like complete uniqueness is not going to be really achievable. But yeah, the future of technology is going to be wild. Like, I don't know if social media is even going to be what social media is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Did you see the Tesla bot?
I did. I saw the like press release for it. I didn't really read up on it at all.
Yeah, so it's still an idea. But
I mean, Elon needs something to put on those spaceships that he can have rove around Mars. That's going to compete with Boston Dynamics.
Yeah. Well, he said that he wants this Tesla bot, which is literally just like a robot.
It looks like a person.
Yeah, it looks pretty sleek. Yeah, it's cool looking.
In typical Tesla fashion.
Yeah, it looks awesome.
Classic Elon.
But he said he wants it to kind of take over the more like laborious tasks that seem quote unquote unnecessary, like picking up something off the ground. It said it. I know. It said it can deadlift like 145 pounds or something like that, and so it would pick up and move different boxes or whatever, stuff like that.
Okay, because we're going here, like we have to talk about this. Let's talk about like
the degeneration of the human body.
No. Oh. The degeneration of the human species.
All societies die.
So for real, like this is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So like let's play this out long term.
Yeah.
Because there's some pretty interesting hypotheses out there that are like really wild to think about. And like we want to think that we know where everything goes. Let me put this out there. So imagine like we've created technology, right? That is a sentient being that is like controlling the world, right? And so I guess one of the hypotheses out there is that we very well may have already done this. And I'm not talking simulation theory. We may have already done this, but being that it's a sentient technology, it knows that these narratives are within our like the zeitgeist of society, and therefore it knows how to not be detected by us. So it's going on right now. All the technology we have is completely manipulating us. Technology is doing this, but it knows to go undetected. And it's completely steering society to where it thinks is best. That's one theory.
Oh my God.
I'm going to put out a second one.
It's like Socratic questioning.
Yeah. A second one. And this one is going to have a fork in the road, and it could go two different ways. Okay, so again, same thing. We create technology and we give it a goal, right? And I think there's actually somebody who's done some like short stories on this type of a topic in like the sci-fi realm. But so let's say we have this new technology and it's an adaptive learning piece of AI, and somebody like Apple puts it into effect to like computer learn all this stuff. What if the development for a very specific task, let's say, create the world's best piece of phone hardware. in learning, and we give it that very strict directive, but what is to say that that directive doesn't go so far out of control that it steps outside of the realm of Apple, and it steps out and it's willing to do at all costs what it's going to take to get the perfect piece of iPhone hardware, right? And what I mean is, to go completely overboard with this, what if it shows that like, oh, well, the number one material that we could possibly use to develop this is like contained in like human blood plasma,
Human brain.
right? Or something like completely ridiculous, but like it's just the thought experiment that I'm talking about. It could be apply to whatever. And all of a sudden in the search for the best iPhone hardware that's out there, all of a sudden this AI that's adaptive is making decisions at the degradation of the human species in pursuit of something that it was programmed to like develop.
Oh man.
So if we don't program these things the right way, they may not have the proper boundaries and ethical decision making built into them to prevent things like a technologically induced genocide of people.
Yeah.
That's another theory.
Yeah.
So there's like
going to be consequences regardless, and that we don't know of.
right.
Yeah. Oh man. I mean, this smaller scale, but this goes. I was watching a video the other day of. It was like a house camera. They had a camera set up inside their home in their living room, and there were two golden retrievers, and they had a little Roomba going around on the floor, and they were trying to figure out how it broke. And the Roomba went over the dog's tail because it thought it was something that was just dirty because it was just hair. Tried to pick it up. It got stuck to the dog's tail. The dog was running around, went up the stairs. Roomba ended up falling down the stairs, breaking the floor. Mm-hmm. But it's like, it wasn't going to stop.
Right.
It was going to keep trying to eat that dog because it thought it was dirty.
Exactly my point.
Scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
unintended consequences are a problem.
And I mean, like, I'm definitely not going to be an apologist for Ted Kaczynski here, but like, this is what the Unabomber.
Oh, yeah.
This is what his claims were in his manifesto.
Oh, yeah.
So like, I mean, there's some, he was making legitimate points. Obviously he had been severely, mentally compromised by the experiments that were done on him, and it led him to be very, sociopathic and whatever.
Yeah. A lot of trauma.
Yeah. But there were some legitimate concerns that he had about the world and where it was going. And,
what were his motives? What was his manifesto?
His manifesto was basically claiming that like the technology that we're developing and the way society's going is going to completely devolve society, and that we won't be able to like last as a human species in a world that's overrun by technology. So like an example is he's saying that like examples of this were, and now everybody has to have a car. Mm-hmm. Because we created roads, and when we created roads, we created goods and services that you had to get on a car for. Mm-hmm. So like the continual development is like leading to requirements of the human being that never should have been requirements if we were like living like quote unquote naturally. That was like his big claim, is that we've created these unnatural living circumstances that now that like you have to live in a city, you have to have a car, you have to do all these things to participate in society. But why should we have to do anything to participate?
Yeah, you have to have a computer.
Right. Yeah. Like if you want to, whatever. So, so he was just kind of like highlighting those flaws, I guess.
It's kind of scary because like the rise of computers, I mean, when we were going to school, we did not have tablets or computers in our classrooms.
There's a computer lab in the school, and you had to be booked by your teacher.
Right. Yeah. And now, like most recently, I see all these kids in elementary school.
When you sign up for school.
They have a laptop on their desk while they're being lectured.
Yeah.
Like while they're in class.
Yeah. Or tablets are becoming really common for that too.
Yeah.
Because you can have all your books on it. You can do everything.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, right. That's a very good point. Bringing up the Unabomber, obviously terrible what happened and what he did and what happened to him, but exactly a good point of like, this is pretty scary.
Yeah.
And these unintended consequences are, yeah.
And I think, if I could like bring it back to the all societies die thing and like try and get to like the crux of what I think, because there's a lot of underlying issues that are at hand with all this stuff. And, social division and like tribalism and all of these like, again, and that's all a piece to this like lack of cooperation that Dr. Cohn was talking about. Man, it is like really, really crazy. Like the level of destruction that can come out of that. And I think, I think it's easy now for a lot of people to look at, their political party, and because that's the hottest topic right now, like this identity politics, like your identity is your political party. And therefore, if you subscribe to a party, people assume to have an understanding of who you are as a person, and and then they're ready to make judgments about you based on one or two things that like allows them to categorize you.
Yeah.
Man, I wish people understood where that leads when it gets too extreme. Because and like another piece of this is like a lack of, I'm not going to go out and claim that there's one dominant religion that needs to be followed by all people. But what a religion does really well is it gives people a grounding to base their morals on.
Yeah.
And I think that's sorely missing in today's society. And when you get into these tribal situations where you're like us versus them, and you don't have a moral grounding to base your decision making off of, you're willing to do anything to support and defend your position. And that's how the Holocaust happens. When there's no moral grounding to say, hey, wait, this is too extreme. We should not go that far.
Yeah.
In defense of what we believe. Like there's a base human morality that is missing from society. And it's scary because, our media plays a huge role in this. I can't like all this like vaccination status stuff has become quite the, firing power for both sides. Like both sides think they're right. And to be honest, the most difficult part about this is if you ask both sides, the facts are different, right? It's not opinions. They literally believe different things.
Yeah.
And that's never, if you can't agree on the facts and then work to a common interpretation, like the facts have to be the same to cooperate. If you're living in two separate worlds because Fox says one thing, CNN says the other thing, it's not even a talking point. Like there's no discussion to be had. We're not living in the same reality. And yeah, so looking at the whole like landscape of modern time and our conversation, I wish people had a better perspective on like the severity of what is going on, because it's like genuinely scary, like how extreme and the language people are willing to use about the other in whatever context they want to use that other in.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that's the scariest part about in my opinion, about what's going on.
I agree. The strong lack of cooperation, it's more of like unhealthy competition of like, we're going to be better than you and we're right and you're wrong, instead of, okay, you're right about some stuff.
It's not even we're going to be better than you. It's we are better than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
Yeah.
And this goes back to our initial point about the like financial incentive that is so present of like media. Like it's no longer about spreading good news. It's about who can get more viewership, leading to more dollars.
And it's honestly become, how can I defend my political side's ideology with this news? It's the taking of what the news is, or maybe what it isn't. So things that are minor, that are insignificant, and creating a narrative to support the Democratic or the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And like that's just pure manipulation, because then you're presenting a reality that isn't actually there.
Right. Yeah.
And
this happens all the time.
terrifying because people fucking believe that shit.
Oh yeah.
You know, people see whatever CNN and Fox put out and they're like, "Oh my God, look at what's happening out there." And
real.
it's like, if you really look into a lot of the stories that put out there, again, there's two sides to every story. So yeah, it's just like, it's a very skewed reality that's put out there if you're getting your information from the news, and social media is right there along with them. If you get your information from social media, it's not the right place.
Yeah. You'll see the same exact topic with flip-flops of how they feel about it if you flip through like Fox or CNN.
Yeah.
Which is terrible.
Or the same topic, but they've got different justifications for why one party's to blame versus the other.
Yeah.
For the same
Every
thing.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's wild. And that there's been a lot of stuff about that with the vaccine. Yeah. We don't have to get into that.
Yeah.
We're 41 minutes in. That could
deep.
take up 7 hours.
Yeah.
And then plus some.
Yeah, I think just, I hope people are, one, willing to be more compassionate with other people about all topics. And two, if you find yourself being triggered by anything out there, I hope people are willing to question why they think they're right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that too. Think.
Yeah. Use that whole noodle.
Think. Well, that's what we're going to have Tesla bots do for us.
I hope not.
And Neuralink.
Jesus. Yeah, I am not optimistic on where this whole like technology over integrating into all of our daily lives is going. I'm like, man, we got millions of years of biology under our belt.
Yeah, this is...
How can we just... And
right.
It would be taking us so far from a biological place.
We should not allow the option for technology to disappear be a thing. Because he said that's the second point that he made in his book, that Dr. Cohn made in his book about like the death of societies, is that technology disappears. Mm-hmm. Let's just get rid of technology so we don't have the option of making it disappear.
I mean, yeah, like that'd be great.
Let's live like
or
cavemen.
Redefine or fine tune our definition of technology.
We should probably do that too.
Yeah.
But let's just keep expanding this shit like crazy, Like let's get it out of control first.
I guess so.
Yeah. See where we can take it, and then maybe we'll mellow out, find a balance.
Doubtful.
It's kind of like crypto right now.
Jesus.
Let that shit run wild, then it's gonna mellow out and possibly fall off.
Yeah. Well, people are saying, I don't know. If you haven't listened to Jordan Peterson had 4 people on his podcast who are crypto experts to like really dive into this thing. Crypto's wild. I would recommend it to anybody to go to listen.
I need to listen to that.
And the functioning of crypto as it could potentially serve as like government. It's weird. You have to listen to it. It's fucking weird.
All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Another Office Hours. Our next episode next week, we talk to a business professor and we talk about leadership and mindfulness.
Boom.
Boom. Have a good one, everyone.